Are we live?
We are.
Good evening, everyone. The first thing we're going to do is all rise for the pledge. And on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America and to the
to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Thank you. Mrs. Callahan, if you would do the roll call, please.
Certainly. Mrs. Johnson,
I'm here.
Mrs. Weisberg.
She's not here.
Mrs. Bays,
I'm here.
Miss Brooks,
Present.
Miss Epstein,
Present.
Miss Gilliar,
Here.
and Mr. Greenstein.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. Okay. Good evening, everyone. How many people do we have watching now? Anybody could see? No? Okay. I'll find out.
103 and counting.
I see 869. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to tonight's board meeting and instructional forum. I know everyone is eager to hear the updated information on our reopening plan, and as promised, tonight's meeting will be informative. First, I want to address a question that's come up a number of times, including several times today. We do have a long history on the board and in this community of taking community comments at our board meetings. We do them both at the beginning and at the end of our meetings. Now that we're virtual, however, I mean, right now we're at 869, but I mean, if I was taking bets, I would think we'll be well over 1,000 within the next couple of minutes. And with those kind of numbers, it's just not feasible to take live questions. We are scheduling another forum, and there will be more live streaming informational meetings. And there's always email. On the subject of email, we've received an extraordinary number of emails from community members. I've responded myself to many of you, and I know some of my colleagues have as well. Although we haven't answered every one, we have read every single email. We are a divided community on what's best for our students at this time in history. We have heard from families who want a fully remote opening for everyone, those who want a virtual option for their own children, those who want a hybrid model for elementary, and those who want all the elementary schools to be in class at the same time. We have those who want questions and demands about live streaming. We have people who are saying, whatever you do, please do not live stream. And we've had requests for a month delay before opening, and many, many others. For every email that we've received from a parent urging us, just urging us to open elementary schools on a hybrid model because they feel that they would be putting their child and their family at risk if we open with all the students in the building at once. For every one of those, and there's been many of those, we've also received many from parents in the last day or two who are furious because they heard a rumor that we are adopting a hybrid model for elementary school and their children won't be in 5 days a week. The common ground in all of these emails is that everyone wants what they believe is the safest option for their children and their family, and they want their children to receive the education that we believe they deserve. And we couldn't agree more. Our mission is to provide the best possible education for every single student in the district. And that's coupled with, during this crisis, our number one priority, that is the health and safety of every student and every staff member and their families. We know you need more certainty in these uncertain times, and we're doing our best to do that as new information is developed about the virus. One comment that ran through about 80% of the emails was a thank you to the board and the administrators for working on this challenge of reopening schools during the pandemic. We, in turn, want to thank the community for their patience as we navigate through these uncharted waters with every other district in New York State and beyond. Thank you. I'm going to turn the meeting over now, but I just want to say, please wear your masks and stay safe. Thank you. Okay, now I am going to make a motion for the adoption of the August 20th agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Brooks. Mary, you want to do the roll call?
It's Ms. Bays. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I saw you both. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Bays,
Yes.
Miss Brooks,
Yes.
Miss Epstein,
Yes.
Miss Gilliar,
Yes.
and Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next we have the, is there an enrollment report tonight, Dr. Shields? Enrollment report tonight or no?
Good evening. What I would share with you is that we received an updated kindergarten enrollment. So we have 384 kindergartners registered, and that's en route to what our projected number was 385. So with only a few weeks till school, we're right around the projected number, which is good news.
Okay, thank you. Now we have superintendent's report. Dr. Hines.
Yeah, to be honest with you, President Johnson, I'm going to save many of my comments for the presentation we will be sharing shortly, if you don't mind.
Not at all, thank you. Okay, now I'm going to make a motion for the adoption of the minutes of both the August 6th and August 10th meetings. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Bays.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Bays. Mary, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mrs. Johnson,
I'm here.
Miss Bays,
Yes.
Miss Brooks,
Yes.
Miss Epstein,
Yes.
Miss Gilliar,
Yeah.
and Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Now we move on to the discussion item, which is the reopening plan. I'm going to turn it over to
Excuse me?
Dr. Hines. I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Weren't you going to do the action item?
Oh, my
Yes.
God. I'm so looking forward to the
I understand.
presentation.
It's
I
far more
couldn't-
interesting
you
too.
know, and I knew something was going too smoothly here. Okay, sorry. Okay, we don't have any committee reports. We're going to move on to the action items, and this is what we call the consent agenda. Going to make a motion for the adoption of items 10.2 through 10.5.1. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Bays.
Thank you. Mrs. Callahan, could you do the roll?
Yes, certainly. Miss Johnson,
Yes.
Miss Bays,
Yes.
Miss Brooks,
Yes. Sorry about that.
Miss Epstein,
Yes.
Miss Gilliar,
Yes.
and Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, before we do proceed, I just want to acknowledge and thank, we got a very generous donation of 2 batting cage nets and an indoor pitching mound from Adam Cirker of Parisi Gym. Thank you very much for that. And those items are going to be used at Weber and Schreiber baseball and softball programs when they resume. All right. Or we want to go ahead with the first reading and on board policy 8635 is on for first reading. Do I have a second to approve it on for first reading? Anybody?
I'll
Mrs.
second.
Bays,
Okay, all in favor? Mary?
Mrs. Johnson,
Yeah.
Ms. Bays,
yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Epstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're ready to move on now to the discussion item, and that is the reopening plan that will be presented by Dr. Hines and Dr. Mioli and some others.
All right, thank you, President Johnson. I'm going to ask that our video engineer, if you can pull up the presentation, please. Thank you. So before we begin, I want to thank our Board of Education and our community, as President Johnson said before, for being as patient as you have been. We are clearly in some unprecedented times when it comes to opening schools. I think it's safe to say when we either read the newspaper or we turn on the TV and we're watching news, you're always hearing something about what school is like, either down south or somewhere else where school is already open or in other countries. We're hearing about other plans and things that are taking place around New York as far as what's taking place. And it's no doubt in my mind that we have anxious parents, staff members, and the last thing we want is to have anxious students entering our buildings when we begin school on September 8th. So tonight what will happen is you're going to hear from 4 people, but mostly Dr. Mioli and myself, but we also were joined by Ms. Javelin and we're by Dr. Pernick. So I'm very thankful that they are here as well. They've done an incredible amount of work and a wonderful job in answering questions, creating videos, having forums, just trying to keep our parents and our students engaged and up to date with what's happening and what's happening with our plan. Because as I've said many times before, our plan has to be fluid. It has to change when new information comes our way. And when it does change, it's our responsibility to share those changes with the community and to provide a real rationale and understanding as far as why that has taken place. And so I'm going to ask our video engineer to go to the first slide. And the way the first town hall was framed and formatted had to do with the questions from our community. And so the way we framed out the first few slides at each level, starting with elementary, and then we'll graduate to Weber and then move to Schreiber. So we're going to start with questions that were asked, so frequently asked questions, and then we will provide the responses. So to contextualize some of the questions that came our way, and then Dr. Mioli will read the slide itself as far as what the responses are. And by the way, I want to make sure that our community knows on our website we have just a general document that actually focuses on the most frequently asked questions. I'm holding it here physically, but it is online for the community to see. And when we update it, we will certainly let you know as far as what those changes are. So some of the questions that came our way at the elementary level had to do with socialization and play, small groups of kids. If we go to a fully virtual model, what does that look like? How do we take care of SEL, so social and emotional learning? Because those are really, really important concerns. And then from a technology standpoint, lots of questions, or many questions, just related to who gets what as far as an iPad is concerned and or as far as a Chromebook. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mioli to review this slide.
I think we probably need to set the table, Dr. Hines, in terms of the change from the last town hall.
Yes, you are correct. So before we even, I was going to do that before the last elementary slide, but yes, let me do that now. I think this is an appropriate time to do it because I know we received lots of emails as far as, why things are happening. So let me go back in time a little bit. Clearly, a lot has taken place since our last town hall to where we are right now. And with that, part of my job and a huge responsibility that I have is to listen to the community and certainly listen to our staff as far as what their concerns are. So I would say over the past several days, I've had multiple meetings with our staff members regarding our all-in plan, meaning that students at the elementary level coming into school. And so what the concerns that I heard from our staff had a lot to do with operationally speaking, talking about the concerns from an instructional standpoint, and really just listening to what they were and to understand that at times what we have in a plan initially, and then you try to operationalize what that looks like, you realize that some things won't work out. And let me tell you something from a health and safety standpoint, and we've said this many times, that is priority number one. And so when we looked at and reviewed, and I certainly looked at and reviewed, as far as all of our students coming in, and you think about what dismissal looks like, you think about when students are dropped off, what that looks like, and then actually when you think about the impact of having all our students in at the same time, the concerns that were brought to my attention, I believe, warranted for us to pivot and make a hybrid plan that really focuses on what's best for kids. And that is, as far as operationally speaking, and then thinking about how we move forward with re-entry, that has to be our our guiding light as we move forward, is what is in the best interest of our students. And trust me, as a parent, I understand the concerns that have come our way regarding childcare and a whole host of other things. But in order for us to enter on September 8th, on the first day of school, we will be moving to a hybrid model, and we will articulate and unpack what that looks like. But please understand that when staff and the community brings up concerns to me, it is incredibly important that they are listened to. And then if, and only if we feel that it's not safe for a full return, and then making it happen, you have to understand that this decision did not come easily. But I will say, at this point right now, we are very proud to introduce what this will look like. And we'll get to that slide in a few minutes. So the questions that I raised before, as far as community questions, we're going to, for the next few slides, I'll read the questions, and then Dr. Mioli will read what some of the answers, and then we will go into what the actual slides look like and what a typical day looks like for an elementary student. So, all right, Dr. Mioli, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. I just want to echo your thanks for my colleagues who are here, Beth Javelin, Ira Pernick. And I also want to recognize all the elementary principals and all of the teachers who have met for so many hours, as well as parents and board members, so that we could really, we've been working all summer, and particularly the last couple of weeks as we get close. There's been a great deal of planning, and I want to thank all of them for all of that work. So I know we have said this before, we brought it up at the last town meeting, but every K and 1 student will receive an iPad for the year, this year, and every second through fifth grader will receive a Chromebook. And I can't tell you how excited I am about that. You talk about making lemonade out of lemons. Through all of this time where we are dealing with so many issues, having a device for every student, I think, will start to really encourage different kinds of instruction. And I think it will be a great boon to the education that we already have had for our students. So parents will have a choice of either a hybrid or a fully virtual instruction. The hybrid being that students would come in on alternate days, or they would be coming in person on some days and be taught remotely on other days. Or you will have a choice for fully virtual instruction. Now, we're going to talk about both of them through the first part of this presentation, but we're going to summarize the fully virtual at the end. So I know it's a lot to keep track of. So in the hybrid model, students will be divided into small groups and remain socially distanced during instruction. They'll come to school 2 days a week and receive instruction through Google Classroom and/or live streaming 3 days a week. In the fully virtual model, students will receive instruction through Google Classroom and/or live streaming every day. Full-time school counselors and psychologists will continue in each elementary building to support social and emotional well-being. And we know that there's been a lot of trauma. We talked about it at the last town hall meeting, and we need these people in our schools working with our children even more than ever. Go to the next slide, please. So there have been a lot of questions about specials, and so art, library, PEP, esteem, enrichment, and classroom music will be held in the classrooms. So the idea is to keep small groups of students socially distanced in the classrooms and to minimize the amount of interaction that they have throughout the day. And in a lot of ways, obviously, that's counterintuitive to how we normally teach children. But for safety's sake, when they are in school, we will do that. Band and orchestra and physical education will be held outdoors whenever possible. Every student will have a special every day in person when in school and through Google Classroom when they are at home. Ancillary and support services will be provided for students who need them. And that's actually a change from when we were talking about the all-in model, because in the all-in model, we needed more teachers to help in classrooms. And so with this hybrid model, we'll be able to continue pretty much business as usual at the elementary school with those kinds of services. We talked last town hall about the needs of our most at-risk students and the need to have them, address what will probably be greater gaps in learning than when they left in March, when we last saw them in March. And so entering and emerging English as new language learners, that's the program, ELLs, English language learners, and self-contained small special education classes will attend in-school classes 4 days a week with 1 day remote. And we actually went back and forth on that. I know Shirley Sapiro, our director of ENL, I think spoke very eloquently when she said that even though we would like them to be in school every week, we think it's important for those students also to get a remote experience so that if we do have to pivot to a fully remote for everyone, as we did last March, that they will have all those protocols down. So that's what we are doing for those populations. Mask breaks will be provided during the day. I know at the last town hall, we spent most of the time talking about the reopening protocols, and this was talked about a lot. And again, school's going to look very different than it did last year at the beginning of the year. And students and staff will have masks on, and we will be providing breaks for them. Again, to minimize movement, and also to keep large groups from gathering. Lunch will be taken in the classroom every day, as well as recess outdoors whenever possible. So here's the schedule, the hybrid schedule that we come up with. And I know it's there's a lot of stuff going on here. I'll try my best to parse it out for you. The important thing I think to keep in mind, and the thing I keep getting confused about myself, and I've wrapped my head around hybrid since we started this in the beginning of June, talking about different possible models. The thing that you need to keep in mind is that there are three populations of children that we need to educate at one time. So first, we are giving parents the fully virtual option. So that means that students will not come into school at all. They will stay home every day where they will be instructed. So that's population one. And then students who are coming into school will be divided into two, generally in half, so that half the students will come in on A days, if we call them A days, and half of the students will come in on B days. That split will be mostly done by alphabet, and the reason for that is to keep siblings together so that they are attending schools on the same days in person and the same days at home. But we will be making some exceptions to that to keep certain populations together and other exceptions. But even then, our benchmark is to keep the families together so that the students are attending on the same days. So the three populations, if you're a teacher, you can have a group of students who are home being educated virtually at all times. You can have your white team, for example, in front of you as you're teaching, and you could have your blue team at home, also at home, that you are teaching, but with the expectation that they're coming in the next day. So what this schedule shows is basically one half, the top line shows one half of that hybrid. So if you look at the column on the sample white day, and it says Monday and Thursday, you'll see that there are two times where all three of those populations go together. If you look down at the first 8:45 slot, 8:15 to 8:45 is teacher collaboration time. And then 8:45 to 9:15, all three of those populations, the team in front of you on a Monday, the team who is at home, but who you expect to come in tomorrow on Tuesday, and the fully virtual team who are home all the time, they will all meet together for a whole class meeting and or instruction through live stream. And then I'm going to show you the very end of the day, which is 2:30 to 3:15. And that is similar to that first band, which is we will begin the day and end the day with the whole class together through live stream. So that was a very intentional way to build community. If I just go to the white column now, If you read down, you see that through the periods. Again, the white team, if I'm a teacher, I have the white team in front of me in person in the classroom. It will be roughly half of my class, and they will have direct instruction from me at 9:15, 11:30, and 1:30. You see a mask break in there, and you see a special. And that just fills out, that gives you a visual of what I just described on the earlier slide. While half or roughly half of the team is in front of me, roughly half is at home. And you can see that after the whole class meeting instruction, they will be going on Google Classroom. And we're just using that term for ease. There are a number of engines that can be used here. At the town hall, we were using the term asynchronous, which I think confused a lot of people. But the blue team will be home. They will be working on instruction through the Google Classroom. They will be doing that at 9:15, 11:30, and 1:30. They also get a special. And as you see, while the white team is having a mask break, that will enable me as the teacher who has the white team in front of me to go on Google Meet or Zoom and have direct instruction with the blue team that's at home. So I know that's a lot, and I know it's a lot to digest, and it's probably hard to see. But if you just go over to the other two columns, the full virtual, any students who opt to stay home and get fully virtual instruction will also be assigned to one of those teams, white or blue, and they will follow that cohort. So if you look at the white team and the fully virtual white team at the same time, you'll see that they'll be meeting together at 8:45, while the white team in front of me is getting direct in-person instruction. That instruction will be live streamed to the white team at home, to the fully virtual team at home. That will happen again at 11:30 and at 1:30. And then if you go to the last column on the right of that top band, students who are assigned, who are at home and doing fully virtual instruction, who are on the blue team, that will mirror the second column, blue team, and they will be in the Google Classroom with their colleagues who are also at home on that day at 9:15, 11:30, and 1:30. So students will be in the hybrid model, will be in school on Monday and Thursday or Tuesday and Friday, and that will be home. The opposite days, this schedule, we could have showed you that schedule, but it's just a mirror image of what you see here. And I think this is enough to try to digest. And then that leaves Wednesday. So Wednesday will be remote for all students. I kind of gave that away when we were talking about the ENL and the self-contained special education classes. So at 8:45, beginning and end of the day, as we do on the other 4 days of the week, there will be whole class meeting and instruction that will be live streamed. All of the students will be remote on Wednesday, so there'll be small group instruction and office hours. This will be flexible time where teachers might follow up on certain lessons or with certain groups of kids, or they might decide to have more whole group instruction if they so choose. They will have all of their class remotely that they can reach. They will have a special. There will be some asynchronous learning, which we're now calling Google Classroom. In other words, they'll be able to go in and watch a video or do a project. And then they will also, teachers will also be able to do other things, such as have virtual field trips, enrichment activities, have social and emotional learning and check-in. This will be a great time for what we would normally call pullouts, band and orchestra lesson, lessons, support services, and project-based learning. So I know that's a lot. I hope that I made it fairly clear, and I think we can proceed. Yeah, you're on mute, Dr. Hines.
So one of the things I wanted to share before we speak and focus on Weber for a second is it was incredibly important for all of us that we embed within the school day several times of where our classes come together, where they feel connected, whether they are at home or whether they are physically in school. And so that I think is clear as far as the schedule that you just showed before, Dr. Mioli. And you know, and of course, focusing on project-based learning is incredibly important as well. Because we will be doing things that we've never done before. We are asking our teachers to do things that they've never done before. And so this is certainly a learning curve for everybody. I will say live streaming is not the same thing. It's not the same thing as far as being physically in school with lessons. I think when we are starting out, I just want to be very clear as far as we always want to have high expectations, but we want to have expectations that are realistic. And for the first weeks of school, especially for our younger students, a focus on social and emotional learning, protocols, procedures, all the different things that our students never experienced before. We have to be very mindful of that for all of our kids. Certainly we know our class sizes are smaller just because of the way the social distancing has to take place as far as the way the desks are arranged. But all those things that are new, we have to look at this as an opportunity to engage in learning type activities that we've never experienced before. And so that is something we will continue to think of. This is, and again, with our plan, where we are right now, if things begin to change over time, then we have to revisit the structure of how we do things. And so I'm looking forward to really focusing on Weber, because Weber, I think, has, and Ms. Javelin and the staff have done an incredible job as far as creating experiences for kids that are very student-centered and focused. Many of the questions that we received from the community had to do with in a hybrid model, what's different from live teaching, and in the middle school, why not have 5 days of instruction? What will happen on Wednesday? How are specials being handled? Will students have a schedule on the days they are learning remotely? How do we group students together? So those are many of the questions that came our way when it came to focusing on how to answer them. And Dr. Mioli is going to talk about what some of those answers are.
So I'll just give you some brief answers and bullet points, and then I'll let Ms. Javelin make sure that I don't flummox up the schedule and end up with 8 days a week, which I think I did in my last presentation somehow. But okay, so again, at Weber, we as parents will have the choice of a hybrid or fully virtual instruction, same terms, hybrid, part-time in-person, part-time at home, fully virtual, all at home, all the time. In the hybrid model, students would be divided into small groups as well and remain socially distanced during instruction. They will also come to school 2 days a week and receive instruction through Google Classroom or Zoom and/or live streaming 3 days a week. Weber students will follow their regular schedules, whether in school or at home, on every day but Wednesday. So Wednesday is similar to what you saw in the elementary school. It will be reserved for additional contact time for teachers, mental health staff to address instructional, social, emotional, and academic support needs of students without interfering with the scheduled in-person and virtual classes. So this will also allow student in-person and virtual schedules to meet on consistent days from week to week. So in other words, if you are in Weber, you'll be at Weber the same 2 days in person and at home the same two days every single week. Students will have specials both when they are in school live or at home remotely. And remote instruction will include teaching through both Google Classroom and live stream. They'll follow the same schedule as when they're in school. And students from the same family are not able to be guaranteed to come to school on the same A or B days, since the split is predicated on grade level and not alphabet. So in the elementary model, we basically split the kids by alphabet to keep the siblings together. I'll let Ms. Javelin explain how she set it up, how the Weber set it up here for very good reasons. But I know that's been one of the questions that we've been getting. And another question we've been getting a lot is grading. There was some different grading put into effect in March, in April and May of last year because of the emergency nature of the situation. But we are planning on returning to traditional grading this year. So these are also very similar to the elementary bullets for hybrid. Weber students will receive all academic classes and specials during their regular school hours. It's important to note that the 6th grade PEP or ESTEAM program will not run this year due to the elementary hybrid needs. If you flip back to the elementary bullet on this, we put PEP and ESTEAM into the specials rotation, which I think is something that will help that schedule immensely. Remote lessons will be 30 minutes long as opposed to in-person lessons, which are 45 minutes or 41 to 45 minutes, in order to reduce screen time at home while keeping instructional integrity. So this was a big discussion point throughout the summer. We investigated any number of models. You saw in our last town hall that we were required by the state to post virtual, hybrid, and all-in models. And for any time when the students aren't all in, and even when they're all in, if there is an option for students to stay home, as we are offering students now, it's important that they have that ability. So the Weber hybrid model can, if necessary, transition to an all remote model seamlessly. Teachers and students will remain in their same pods and their same time periods. So we're calling a cohort at Weber a pod. And they will continue to be taught live. Students who are out sick or for short periods of time, such as quarantine, will be able to attend all classes through live Google Classroom 3 days a week and live streaming 2 days a week. Another question we got a lot was accelerated students. Most accelerated students will be grouped together in pods to minimize movement again throughout the day, but there are a handful of exceptions based mostly on language taken. And pods will not change as the year progresses. They are carefully formed on language and team. And I will turn it over to Ms. Javelin.
Good evening, everybody. I feel like this, I should take this on the road. I feel like I've said this so many times. So it's similar. You're going to see a lot of the same slides that you saw in the video if you watch the video that we sent out. But to go over our hybrid model, the days of the week are Monday, Tuesday, AB, and then Thursday, Friday is going to be BA. I think the important piece of our plan is that they are getting 5 days of live instruction. So whether they're in person in front of us or they're home in front of the screen, the schedule is built to make sure that the students have live instruction. We realized when we were discussing our plans and going over the plan that the live and connection to the students that we have every day is really, really important. And that's what makes middle school. We hear about all their little issues that they have, their concerns they have, and teachers connecting with the students is really important. So we felt very strongly that they needed to have live instruction every day. In order to make that happen, we had to grade band which days kids were coming in. So if I'm an 8th grade teacher, I have all my kids today. So tomorrow when they're home, I am free now so I could be able to teach them live when they're home. We also felt that it was important that they are live within their pods or their groups, because it was important for the teachers to meet with the students on a smaller level so we could get to know our kids, make connections with our kids, and really be able to deliver instruction. So again, there's 5 days of live instruction, 9-period schedule. They're going to follow their schedule. And Wednesdays, as Dr. Maley said, is all virtual for everybody. And there's several things that will happen on that day. We could go to the next slide. So here is the in-person. So when students come to school, this is what the schedule will be. It is our normal bell schedule. Nothing has changed. Monday and Thursday, grade 8, yellow 6, and red 6 will be in school. Tuesday and Friday, grade 7, blue 6, and green 6 will be in school. Again, it's a typical 9-period day. Housing and teaming will remain intact. Students will remain in pods. Teachers will be rotating into the pods, which will lessen the movement in the building. Lunch will be eaten in the pods, and recess will be provided when possible in designated areas for each pod. So again, we did this. So if you're live streaming, you would get the 41 minutes of listening to what's going on in the classrooms. Okay, next slide, please. This is what the schedule looks like for remote. So it's, if you compare the two schedules, the time periods are almost identical. This is just the first 30 minutes of every period. And again, we did this because some of the teachers will be teaching some of the day live and some of the day virtual. So on the remote days, Tuesday and Friday, grade 8 and yellow 6 will be having their remote days. Monday and Thursday, grade 7 and blue 6 and green 6 will have their remote days. Students, again, will follow their 9-period schedule. It will just happen virtually. The starting times, which I said, mirror the in-person schedule. It was just the first 30 minutes of the class. Sessions will be live and attendance will be taken. Teachers and pods, once again, will remain the same. So all the teachers are the same, whether you're in school or if you're remote. Students are expected to attend all classes, no different if we were live. And part of us building in the 15 minutes at the end was screen time, as well as us wanting students to be able to take a break, go to the bathroom, get a glass of water, organize their materials for the next class, and get ready for, for learning for the next period. So again, it's 9 periods a day, same schedule, except it's 30 minutes, same teacher. Okay, so the Wednesday schedule. So this schedule, it's still going to be scheduled. It just looks a little different from a period standpoint. We did this based on departments. This way there's no overlapping. So one of the things that was discussed a lot last year was that students didn't know which section to go to because there were some overlapping times. So we decided that it was better to make it as departments. This way that every student will have a half-hour time, increment of time for their subject area. That could happen. Again, it's 9 periods a day. Attendance will be taken during home base. And it's important. There's lots of things that happen in the middle school that you miss. The conversations in the hallway that kids come over to you and talk to you about. Students needing help with an assignment, not understanding directions. And this day is going to allow us to do that, to do some small group instruction. If we see students are falling off, we could ask them to come for a small group instruction. If I want to grab all 100 plus of my students, I could do that and do an additional lesson for all students. We could do some peer collaboration. Students could work on some independent work, extra help. Our music lessons will come out of this time. And then we also have some time for support services like OT, PT, speech, maybe some counseling. We left some time at the end of the day, additional time, because we do not want to take students as much as possible out of their instructional classes. I think I've hit it all.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Javelin. We really appreciate that, and everything that you've done over the summer, really setting the stage for student success. And before we move on to Schreiber and the frequently asked questions, there are many questions related to the technology that our students would use on the days that our hybrid kids were, in the schedule, were home, like what would take place. Questions about why wouldn't we be able to bring all of our students back at once, which clearly and understandably so is one of the most frequently asked questions, because we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then, of course, if students are pulled out, what happens to our students who are pulled out either for services or for specials that they may have? How does that look? And then finally, talking about just class size and electives and what that looks like. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mioli so we can unpack the frequently asked questions and then move on to the schedule.
All right. I'm noticing as I look at this that I left that bullet out of the middle school. In case you were wondering, middle school students are also getting a Chromebook, and teachers. So again, they will have that both in school and at home. And that's going to really, I think, make our instruction terrific. All students will receive that, and the Chromebooks, there have been some questions about charging. So at Schreiber, they will also get their Chromebooks. The teachers will get a Chromebook, and we're asking the students to bring them in fully charged. There'll be limited or very few opportunities for charging at school. On virtual days, students will log in for attendance and be able to experience classes through Google Classroom and or live streaming. So I know you're hearing the same things for the third time, but there will be an option for students and parents to have the hybrid or fully remote, and actually very similar to Weber, the transition from one to the other, should we need to, in an emergency situation, will be very seamless, because there will be, students will be following and teachers will be following the same schedule throughout both. There were questions about bringing back all the seniors or some entire grade level, and that was explored as part of the hybrid plan. And the challenge was not the size of the school, but the capacity of each classroom. Again, similar to Weber and the elementary schools, students are going to be socially distanced in the classrooms, which means that the desks will be 6 feet apart. We've taken a lot of furniture out of all the classrooms, K to 12, so that we could maximize the number of students that we can put in. And so, bringing back all the seniors really would not work, because we wouldn't be able to run the courses that exceed 14 students, which is about the limit on any classroom, even the larger classrooms. And you see some of the examples there. And next slide. The questions were coming in, is it going to be the same schedule in terms of days and the same schedule in terms of time? And the answer is yes. It will remain a 6-day cycle. It will remain 8:05 to 3:05. And again, that's whether you come to school in September in the hybrid model or in the remote model, or if we are forced to go to fully remote as we did in March. It's the same block scheduling, same class meeting patterns. Students will be scheduled for at least 30 minutes for lunch and have 5 minutes between classes. Students will engage in the course content for their 1-hour class periods. And then pullouts will be similar. There'll be, students will be able to be pulled out of classes for live music sectionals, counseling, or other excused reasons, as they would if we were in school. We've talked about social and emotional learning and the need for us to be, trauma sensitive as we return to school in September. And so the committee decided that assistant principals will hold weekly small group check-ins check-in sessions with 10 students each, and that's in addition to our counselors. And our mental health team, social workers, guidance counselors will continue to work with both individual and small groups for a variety of purposes. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pernick to go through the schedule with you.
Thanks very much. Thank you for inviting me. I think you did a great job, Dr. Mioli, of summing up the Schreiber plan. The general idea was to construct a plan that would be seamless for students no matter where they are in school or home in the hybrid or fully out of school remote, or for all remote. So students will be following a schedule. A sample schedule is what you see in front of you. This is a schedule for a student on the blue team. Blue team students will be in school on A day, C day, and E day, and home in the hybrid on B, D, and F. They're going to follow the same schedule no matter where they are. And under any circumstances, we wanted to create seamless transitions. We think that's the best way to maximize instructional time. I've gotten many email concerns, appropriate concerns, about opportunities for learning and instructional time, making sure that students are prepared for what lay ahead for them. And so we believe that this model will do our best to address it. So A through F day, 8:05 to 3:05, every day, no matter where you are.
Thank you, Dr. Pernick. I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is where we share with our community our full virtual learning platform. And before I go through the next several slides, as far as what this looks like, I want to be very clear that the Board of Education really wanted us to not only explore this, but to make it happen for our students. And in the initial guidance that we received from the State Education Department, it originally really just focused on medically fragile students who were unable to attend. And, you know, the board really, in thinking of students who may not just feel comfortable, and when I say students, parents sending their children to school because of what's happening, really wanted to make sure that we provided this. And so in doing so, we explored several options. You know, one of the options was, how do we potentially partner up with other school districts and form a consortium of schools coming together to pool resources to make this happen. You know, unfortunately, that didn't work out. And when you explore something like that, that takes time in order to happen. Another option that I was somewhat hopeful for was, I know Nassau BOCES is working very hard to provide some option for school districts as well, for students who won't be attending school in brick and mortar, like physically coming to school. And my last actual meeting with them, or it was a Zoom meeting, was earlier this week. So after exploring those options, we've come to the point now where we are moving forward with this option. And I just want to talk about live streaming from putting my educator hat on and what that entails. You know, I think we will hear many people say, and I would agree with this, live streaming is not a substitute for being physically in school. When you are in a classroom with a teacher, and I think, as Ms. Javelin said before, and I believe Dr. Pernick did as well, it's a very special experience. There are things that you can't do virtually that that students will miss out on. And it's different in the sense that if you want to just have a one-on-one conversation with the student, you want to check in and see how a student's doing in real time, those things make a big difference. So when we talk about live streaming, I just want to be very clear that we are doing this because it is so important that we have all of our kids connected. That was one of the biggest recommendations we heard from our school community, is that we had students who and parents who felt like they were not connected to their classroom or to the school itself. And that's nobody's fault except for the fact we heard about it, we learned from it, and now we're providing this. So as I go through these slides, if this is something a parent is interested in for their child, you know, you can now move your child into a 100% remote learning option. And we are asking, I'm not asking, actually, we will have this on our website, this particular link, if you want to move in this direction. So we'll have that up on our website tomorrow. And it is imperative, because there's a lot of planning that would have to go into place, that the intent form that you would be filling out is completed by Friday of next week by 3 p.m. And the families who choose 100% remote learning can opt back into blended learning on a monthly basis. You know, one of the planning concerns when it comes to this is that, you know, a parent may say, I don't want my child to start school physically, so they want to go this option, but then maybe after a few weeks, they want to have their child come back. And so we are asking that it won't happen overnight. We're asking that when we hear about this, that you give us time to prepare that, and vice versa, because I have a feeling, you know, and I've said this many times too, that we may have students who are in school who may opt for this and vice versa. So there'll be a lot of back and forth. And again, not just here, I believe in many school districts that will provide this option for families. So we'll just move to the next slide. Now, when we talk about the full virtual learning platform, everything that we're doing, that we're teaching in our classrooms, of course, follows New York State standards. And when we talk about instruction, there is a combination of synchronous, that means live instruction, and via Google Meet or Zoom, and asynchronous, which is what Dr. Mioli talked about before, as far as students having work to do, project-based learning, any other type of work that they have throughout the day. And I think one of the benefits is, when we talk about instruction, there's small group instruction, whole group instruction, and then again, having that independent work for students to make sure that they understand what's taking place. And then, of course, we have to take attendance daily. So at the elementary model, what we're looking at is students who are fully remote will be assigned to a regular classroom. And again, that's that connection piece. So when we talk about a student in a particular class, and you will be in a particular cohort, let's say at the elementary or middle school, you'll be in a blue group or a white group, and you follow that group of kids every day. And I think the beauty at the elementary model is that you are starting the day together and you are ending the day together. That is one of the things that, to feel connected, you're just part of that whole experience. And then you have items and things that you're doing and the learning that's happening in between as well. So we'll have 3 periods of instruction via live stream. Now, on the days the cohort team that's not in school, as I said before, they'll start and end their day, but students will also have 1 direct instruction lesson as well, and then 3 periods of asynchronous learning. So what we talked about before in Google Classroom, you know, having those items to work on and focus on after the teacher checks in. And then, as we said before, students will have a special every day. When we talk about Weber, we're talking about, again, students who are fully virtual. They'll be assigned to a team. So they'll have the team that they're on, and they will follow their schedule, and they will stay with their cohort. And we're calling them pods. And again, students will live stream when students are in school. And on the days the cohort pod is not in schools, the teachers will actually meet with them virtually with all the students present. And then finally, students will have all of their classes encore, encore as well. Now, when we look at Schreiber, students who are fully remote will be assigned to, again, their regular classroom that they have on their schedule. The students will live stream the class that they are attending for synchronous or live instruction. And then again, we'll be utilizing Google Classroom for classes, including posting links to Google Meet or Zoom. So they'll be using Google Classroom for a lot of assignments and such. Now going to the last slide, which is the timeline. We're, clearly where we are right now, we have our board meeting, which I know was changed, and what we're doing right now is updating the community as far as our instructional plans. Tomorrow, that link, as I just shared before, so if a parent is really wants to move in that direction, they can begin to sign up as they click on that link, and then they'll go through a series of prompts that they would fill out. And then on Tuesday, we have our elementary parent meetings. I know for many of you, you went to the Weber meetings already, and you also went to the Schreiber meetings, and I heard they were very highly attended, so that's fantastic. And then, as I said before, on Friday, the opt-out deadline for virtual learning next Friday is when we will have that cutoff. So it'll be on Friday. Now, I know many community members and students are asking, as far as class assignments, when will they be sent out? When will students and parents know? And so our target dates are between the 2nd and 3rd of September. And then finally, the first day of school, as you know, originally. And again, it goes with the theme of everything that we're doing as far as planning is concerned. We initially started on the 2nd, then we went to the 3rd, but after looking at all the professional development that will have to take place with our staff and teachers, and really focusing on safety, focusing on instruction, and clearly focusing on this very new educational construct and paradigm that our students and staff will be moving toward and into. We have 4 professional development days set up for our educators and staff to make sure when students come back that we are ready for them, and we can't wait to see all of our students. So I want to thank you for everybody who was part of this presentation, for everybody who put together this presentation. A special thanks to Dr. Mioli for doing an incredible job explaining everything. And I'd like to thank our 2 principals, Ms. Javelin and Dr. Pernick. I know the board will have questions, and I know we'll be able to add some insight as far as answers are concerned. But so I'm going to turn it over to you, President Johnson, and we can proceed forward.
Okay, I'd like to thank Dr. Hines, Dr. Pernick, Dr. Mioli, and Mrs. Javelin. Thank you so much for for your presentation. And now we will get to questions from the board. I see that Emily goes first, and then Larry, and I'm going to check the chat.
Okay, thank you. I do also want to thank everybody for working very hard on this. I want to start off by saying that this has been a horrible time for all of us. We go into meetings, and I know that the committees have been meeting since the end of June or earlier. I don't really remember anymore because I've lost track of time. And we've come up with plans, and yet we present them to the community, and we've changed them. And I feel for the community that is now hearing our change in our elementary school plans. I understand the reasons that we had to make these changes. I was one of the people who thought that a 5-day in was an option that would be better for our elementary school students. And yet I do understand the reasons that we had to go and make our changes. So my question with regards to the elementary school plan is the way we've had to pivot based on the concerns we've had from our parents and our staff with regards to opening all in. When can we expect to reassess the plan and see when we can perhaps look at bringing in all our elementary school students? And I ask this really more importantly, because one of the things that this community has prided itself on, and our board has always talked very, very strongly about, is that we are a very diverse community. And we have just as many working parents as non-working parents, and probably we have more working parents now. So I'm concerned that we are not disservicing the children who need to be in school for not just learning, and elementary school students need to be in school, in my opinion, to learn, but also for all the extra services they need, and as far as helping their parents navigate this process. So when can we expect, that's question number one. I'm going to have a couple more questions, but question number one is, when can we expect to see a reassessment?
So thank you, Emily. I will say that I think it's fair to say after reopening and everybody becoming reacclimated to the protocols, procedures, and what a typical day looks like, and of course, possibly receiving more guidance from the Department of Health within the first month of school, potentially more guidance from the State Education Department. I think it's fair to say by early October, we can begin to really assess as far as where we are, and then where we would like to be as far as in a very, I know you know this and everybody knows this, in the safest way possible to re-enter all of our kids.
Thank you. So with regards to the elementary program, my question is, and I know it's a question that we've heard from parents on many occasions, lunch indoors. And I know that we've talked about doing recess outdoors when possible. I'm wondering, is it not possible to also, especially in the early months where it's still warm outside, and if the weather permitting, could we also not be doing lunch outdoors as well? And is it something that we've given some consideration to?
So to be fair, I would say we've probably considered that, but I think we need to re-explore other potential options as far as, having lunch outside. I know that we have purchased, it may take a little while to get the canopies and the tents for outdoor space. That's one of the great things about these first few months. We can do a lot of things outdoors in outdoor classrooms. But yeah, we've heard a lot of questions about mask breaks and eating lunch indoors in a safe way. And so we will continue to work with our elementary principals and reach out to the Department of Health to figure out other ways to ensure that kids and staff are safe during those times. And we can report back to you in short order.
Thank you. Okay, and that actually leads to my
Excuse me,
my
Emma.
next
Okay,
question.
three questions, and we'll go on.
Okay. Hey, I never
I
ask
didn't limit
questions.
it, but now I'm going to.
Okay, thank you. This is actually my final question, and it's with regards to the cost, and it brings up. So in our fully virtual platform, I'm curious. You talked a lot about how we will be doing it, but there must be technological costs associated with it or details. So I'm wondering if you could just share with us a little bit what the process will have to be to get us up and running for live streaming, and hopefully okay. And with regards to process, because Nora limited me to 3 questions, I just want to remind us that if we could possibly make sure that we put your presentation on the website. I know that we will, but I'm just kind of making a comment that we will be putting your presentation on the website, and that the elementary school principals are all holding their meetings, and I believe that they've all moved them to Tuesday of this coming week in light of these changes. So I'm just letting the community know that when they have questions with regards to specific school and how the process will work in their particular school, the principals are going to be addressing all of those issues. So that was the timeline kind of question that I added in as far as my comment. But going back to my question with regards to costs for the fully virtual platform and the technology that we need to get it all in place. That's the question.
Okay, thank you for that question. So let me just go back in time a little bit. And I believe the district knows this, the community knows this, but it really all started with the districts and our purchasing of technology with Chromebooks, which are due to arrive. I spoke to Ryan Maloney a lot today and yesterday as far as waiting for that potential date, but they're looking to arrive next week, which is really critically important because they will be used every single day in school and of course out of school. With that, in order to have the most successful experience, we are expanding our bandwidth here. So that's important, because just think about it from a building level. If all the students, let's say at Salem, are on their computer, we have to expand the bandwidth, and so we are doing that. When we also look at the type of equipment that will be used by the teacher in their classroom, we are purchasing a microphone for every class, purchasing a camera and a tripod for every class, and we want to make sure that the whiteboard is set up, the smart board, I should say, is set up as well. So all of that, roughly speaking, you're looking for a dollar amount. Was that the question as well? Okay, so we're looking roughly between $100,000, $110,000 at the moment right now.
Thank you. That was my question, Nora.
Okay, thank you. I believe that Mr. Greenstein is up next.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, we've, as a board, we've asked an awful lot of our administrators and our teachers, and, you people have no idea how hard they've been working and how many hours they've been putting in every day for the past 3 or 4 weeks, or probably even 6 weeks. So I do want to thank you all for your time. As Dr. Hines said before, that, we are asking the teachers to do a lot. We are asking them to look at new paradigms. We are asking them to operate in a new way. And I'm sure they're going to figure out how to make lemonade out of the lemons that we're handing them. But I think it's especially important that we put the collaboration time in the elementary school. So I was really glad to see that, because having the teachers be able to talk with each other and look at best practices and look at what's working and not working is vital. And even in a regular classroom, sometimes teachers just don't get enough time to talk among themselves. So I think I'm really glad to see that, and I'm glad to see we're putting in as much professional development as we can to make sure that they, have as much of a head start as we can give them, even though they're going to be trying to find their way somewhat once school starts. But I have 3 sort of minor questions. One is at the middle school. I know one of the things at middle school is you had the 4 minutes between classes, so you got your aerobic workout racing from one side of the building to the other. Now with everybody in and this I guess goes to the elementary school too. How are the kids just going to get to stretch their legs? I mean, are they going to be sort of built in, just like stand and yawn or do something breaks? Because I know I can't. My watch tells me every hour to get up and move. I can't sit still for that long. So I'm just wondering how that might work. Or is that just going to be up to the teacher to figure out sort of on the fly?
So let me start with agreeing with you very much. When we think of students moving, there's the guidance that says we don't want the students to move too much, right, within the buildings to stay safe. And then there's the reality that developmentally speaking, if students don't move, it's really bad for their health. So these are the nuanced things that our principals and administrators and teachers will continue to figure out. And some of these things, some of the questions that you'll be asking tonight or tomorrow or even maybe a week from now, we won't know what some of those answers are until school begins. And believe me, I feel very uncomfortable saying that we may not potentially have an answer. But as far as our students' health is concerned, as far as movement, yeah, that's something we really have to consider. And I think, I believe Nora or someone asked questions about lunch and eating outside, and that'll be part of it as well, having a mask break, bringing them outside. But let's think about February, what February and March look like, and going outside for that amount of time. So these are the logistical things that we will continue to focus on, and we will have answers and share them with the community and the board when we have them. I don't know if Ms. Javelin or Dr. Mioli have things that they wanted to add as well.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it well. I was just going to say that I do think, teachers at the elementary level for sure, often take their kids for breaks. We do have outdoor classrooms, as President Johnson knows very well, and Sousa, and I think all the elementary schools now. So there is that tradition of doing it anyway. Again, it's the balance, as Dr. Hines said.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that you weren't going to have an answer. Oh, yes, we're going to do this. But I was just sort of bringing it up, and I know that play is very important to the administration as part of development. And I know I know it's going to happen one way or the other in any plan that we have. So anyway, I appreciate that. My other question is probably even more mundane, which is there seem to be more holidays on Mondays. So is that, so are we gonna like say, okay, this week Thursday is actually Monday or something, which I know they do at colleges. If you have a Monday class, sometimes they just have it, or, you know, are there not enough days like that that really make a difference in the overall scheme of things? And so anyway, again, you might not have the answer to that right away. I don't know whether it's something that anybody looked at or not, but just thought I'd throw that one out there.
So, Larry, we actually looked at that in the middle school, and when you look at it throughout the entire year, it equals out. It's like a day or two off from the other days. So we actually did look at that in the middle school.
Great, no, I appreciate it. And my last question is also one I know you don't have the answer to now, but I know that it's being worked on. But I'm just wondering if you could just let people know about that, you know, whether we will have a pre-K program running, and that, you know, the people who've signed up for it, just so that if we are running it, they know that, and just even though we don't have any plans settled yet, because I know it's a very fluid situation.
Yes, I have a proposal on my desk that as soon as we finish this meeting, I will be getting to. Yes, pre-K will run, and we'll get information to you shortly.
Great, I appreciate it. More for the parents than for me, but thank you.
Oh, thank you for asking that, Larry, because I did get a number of emails from parents of pre-K students inquiring. So thank you. The next up is Deb, and then Julie.
Thank you. I have a question about the elementary plan, and then a question about Schreiber, and then a question about the full virtual remote, or whatever we're calling that option. So Port Washington now joins the ranks of districts that have revised their plan. We're not the first. I know Scarsdale was on its third plan last time I checked, which doesn't excuse anything, but it's hopefully to give the community an understanding that many districts are going through this angst. I am sure that there were parents who were thrilled with the 5-day in plan who are now, well, I don't even know how to describe what they're feeling, but they're not happy. And there were parents who were terrified of the 5-day plan who are now very happy, and maybe parents in between. And so my question, when we try to balance this out, maybe Dr. Hines, you can answer the question, is in the process, how did we get to the point where we are now? Did the elementary subcommittee reconvene?
Are you asking me to, was that the only question, or were there more questions?
No, for you, that's my question. For
Okay.
now, about the elementary. Was the process at the elementary subcommittee reconvened? And I know that there are a lot of teachers on that committee. I don't know if there are any administrators or principals.
Sure.
Am I
No,
correct that this is a
very good question. So let me dig a little deeper than I did before. And I appreciate that question. So I met with our elementary teachers earlier in the week, and it was important to listen to their feedback, concerns, and ideas about what's best for kids. And in those initial conversations, when I met with all three buildings, it was clear it fell into two categories: from a safety standpoint and from an instructional standpoint, right? Which I think, of course, are the two most important things as we re-enter. And so when we talk about safety, there were a lot of concerns when you bring all the students back. How do you keep them socially distanced, not only in the classrooms, in the hallways, but also in arrival and dismissal? Major concerns that when we really began to look at the details of what and how this would look like, they were concerns that were valid. From an instructional standpoint, which is just as important, what we had in mind as far as the plan was concerned had to do with how do you create an experience for students and keep all of the programs or most of the programs intact. And so the plan that was shared with the staff had to do with departmentalizing each grade level. So I'll give it for instance. So let's say in third grade, you have 4 teachers.
This was the
Right.
original plan. This was the original plan.
This was the plan we were looking to move forward. And basically, when you departmentalize, now clearly we have that at the secondary level, but when you have that at the elementary level, it begins to focus on one teacher teaching one content area. So one teacher for the grade would teach, let's say, ELA, another teacher would teach science. And that is very atypical when you look at elementary schools, because even when you look at certification, they're generalists, right? They're not teaching one specific content area. But in that particular model, when it was shared, there were concerns about connecting with kids, students having one teacher to connect with for the day. And so from an instructional standpoint, and from a health and safety standpoint, there were some real concerns, valid concerns, that this was not going to be a good idea in relation to how kids would function within the school day. So when you took the instructional concerns and then you took the health and safety concerns, and you think about where we are in this particular moment, I wanted to bring it to the subcommittee, the elementary subcommittee that started, as you said, months ago, right? And we had teachers there, we had administrators, and we had board trustees there as well to try to figure out what we can do to have our students not only enter safely and to be safe during the day, but to have an instructional program that meets the needs of all of our kids. And so there was a lot of thought and deliberation over several days, and we had a parent on board as well. So there were lots of conversations for several hours, and that led us to where we are right now. Now, as I think Trustee Bays said before, we will reevaluate at the end of September, early October. My preference is we need at least a whole month in before we start looking at evaluating, and we need to look at specific metrics as far as what that would be. But I also don't want to, how do I put this? I want to be realistic as well, because there are variables outside that I'm hoping that will lend itself to allow all of our students coming back. And not just for elementary, by the way, it's for our middle school kids and our high school kids. I really, really believe, and I know this as a working parent, I know the impact of finding childcare for kids for a few days a week. It's not easy. And believe me, there were lots of considerations and thoughts surrounding that. And so where we are right now in our plan is we're at this hybrid model, K through 12. But we will continually reassess this plan. This is what we will be doing all year. Is it working? Can we make it better? If this isn't working, we should get rid of it. If there's something we didn't think of before, we need to introduce it. But this will evolve and mature over time. But where we are right now, as far as making sure everyone's safe, this was the purpose of tonight.
Okay, thank you. My next question for our, I get tongue-tied, the full virtual learning platform program. I know we're going to have a link up on our website so parents can start to sign up if that is something they want, and that is K through 12, right?
Correct.
Will there be any, I don't want to say guidelines, rules, regulations that will be posted so parents understand what expectations the school district has of them in terms of no screenshots, and how children know how they're supposed to access we have this, renewed view into the classroom from the home. I didn't know if that was going to be on the website or coming shortly or.
Will, and that will evolve as well as far as the document. But yes, we're creating a remote learning expectations guidelines and procedures as far as both the students should know and to read, but certainly our parents as well. And it's important that our staff knows what those expectations are as well. So we'll have information coming out shortly.
Okay, and my third question is for anybody who wants to answer, but perhaps, oh, I'm sorry, am I on mute? Oh,
No, that was, go ahead,
perhaps
sorry.
Dr. Pernick. Now that there will be live streaming, I guess on a daily basis for the people for the students who are home all the time, I must confess I'm a little confused as to how that impacts the students who are in school on their blue team day and not in school on their white team day or vice versa. Are those students in what we're calling the hybrid program also live streaming? Is this a sea change for them? Or will their alternate days continue as the subcommittee had decided, where it will be Google Classroom or live streaming if the teacher decides? I'm sorry, could you unpack that for me, please? And it could be Dr. Pernick, could be, anybody who can explain it, I'll take it.
Could you just repeat the question, Deb?
Yes.
I think
Okay,
maybe
so
that's the confusion.
The hybrid model at Schreiber is divided with kids being in school one day, out of school the next day, in school, out of school, and they're on a blue team or a white team. And on the days where the kids were scheduled not to be in school, not because they're fully virtual, but because it's their alternate day to be out of school, there was going to be Google Classrooms, asynchronous learning, let's say, is what the experts on the subcommittee said was the pedagogically sound way to do it. So I'm wondering, now that there will be live streaming for the kids who are home all the time, whether they're assigned to the blue team or the white team, how does that impact, if at all, the kids who are in school one day, out of school the next day, back in school the next day on their alternate days? Is their at-home experience changing because of the live streaming for all the kids who are staying home?
It's my understanding that the answer is yes. It will change, and that the expectation will be that live streaming will be available to all students who are home, regardless of if they are in the hybrid or fully remote.
Thank you. So then the course of instruction will change. The course of instruction then will be on a day-to-day basis, as though all kids were in school every single day, A through F, rather than the flipped classrooms, or you not?
I'm leaving some of those choices are going to be left up to teachers. I still think flipped classrooms are going to exist. They existed before we went out in March. They'll exist going forward. I do think, though, that we should be careful about calling being in class and being on video from class as something that is the same. The experiences are going to be completely different. I do expect the curriculum to move forward, but I was expecting that to happen in our original model before we introduced live streaming. So I do think, yes, what you described will happen. Curriculum will move forward, but I don't want to call those two experiences the same.
I understand. I guess what I was trying to understand is the alternate days were going to be asynchronous for the most part.
Right. That has changed.
That's changed.
But I would like to add that there are still going to be asynchronous materials.
I understand.
For students in Google Classroom. There are going to be projects and assignments that are going to be loaded in there. I don't think it's a reasonable expectation that teachers will be speaking suddenly in their classes for 60 minutes per period, given that that's not typically how teachers run their classes.
And I have been briefed on that by my teenagers. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Deb. I believe that Ms. Epstein has a question or two or three.
Yes. Well, actually, Ms. Brooks asked two of my questions, so thank you. On the elementary question to go through, Dr. Hines, the how and why rationale, as well as clarification for the high school. My other questions are that I think the community members would love to know about, as well as myself, is will there be more information about the full virtual learning platform? This is a lot of information to learn and unpack. And of course, all details cannot be shared at this time. Otherwise, we'd be here all night or into next week and next year. So is there a way that people can find out more? Will there be further town halls? What is our plan for that?
So yeah, let me answer. I'll answer one question at a time. Yeah, so we're looking to have some information available to our community by early next week. That provides more detail to what the virtual learning option is. But I will say, after listening tonight, I'm hoping it's clear that not only do we have an option, but that students, if they choose to be home full time, will be able to, be a part of a class or a cohort of it. It may sound good to some parents, to have that option, but please, I want to be very clear as far as what that means from an instructional standpoint. It is not the same as being in a class and having a teacher in front of you. And so I want to have language that's very clear as far as what that means, but having more detail, we will have that for our parents in short order as well.
Great, thank you. Along the same lines as that, just for clarification for parents, if a large quantity of students sign up for the full virtual learning platform at the elementary level, do you see that you are then going to pivot quickly to a 5-day program because you have no one in the schools?
I've been asked that question quite a bit, actually. So I guess I'd love to say yes, but here's the reality. And we have to think these things through in what potentially can happen. So if a parent decides now to have their child out, but decides then to bring their child back into school, physically into school, a month from now, then what? So let's say we have 200 students. Well, let's just say we have 60 students out in Sousa. And then the following week, it's down to 20, right? And all those other students come back. What happens if we don't have a place for them? We cannot reshuffle classrooms. We can't move students into different buildings. We wouldn't want to do that. It's way too disruptive. So if a student is physically not there, we will still act like they are there just in case they come back. We have to be very careful about a free and appropriate education. We can't just say to a parent, once you're out, you're out. It's just not the way it works. So we have to think about those things.
Thank you. And then my last question is really a process question. We've set up this organization with the reopening committees and the instructional committees, and I know some of them are still meeting. But from this elementary circumstance, I think that we've learned that these committees have proven beneficial and that there is still more work and will continue to be more work that's done. Is it your plan to continue to move forward with these committees, all meeting, evaluating, establishing the metrics for evaluating and assessment, setting protocols, et cetera?
We have to. There's no doubt about it. I probably should have disclosed this to the committee members where they think they're just working in the summer and that's it, but it's not the case. So clearly once, especially when we get new guidance, as I said before, from the Department of Health or the State Education Department, and as new information arrives from other sources, we would need to reconvene. I know the Communications Committee, even though we didn't meet this week, we will have to meet once a week. One of the things we have found to be extremely vital is making sure that the community receives information in a timely manner that is concise and easily understandable. and shared in multiple modalities. So these are the things that will take place, whether it's the communication subcommittee or the building protocols committee, so on and so forth. We have to meet all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Julie and Rachel, you're up next.
Sorry, Julie's first, right?
I just finished my 3 quota questions.
You done? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I just want to say, once everybody asks, then you get a new 3-question quota.
Sorry, I thought you were saying Julie had one more. Okay, so questions. I think at the top of people's minds, even though I know we've focused on instructional a lot here, a lot of parents are asking health and safety questions as well. And I think I want to note publicly that one of the things that I think that this district did right in the spring, and that I'm very proud of us for doing right, is that we always err on the side of making sure that our students and staff are safe. And so in the spring, when we were getting very little guidance on what to do or how to react, we closed at a time before other districts closed, because this board and this administration were committed to making sure that this community was fully safe. And I really believe that that commitment is carrying through in all the decisions that we're making in the fall as well. But parents still have questions, obviously, because they want to know for sure. So one of the questions that I've heard from parents a lot is that in our plan, a close contact is defined as being within 6 feet of somebody, unmasked. I think it's for 10 minutes. And then the children, we are keeping 6 feet apart with masks on in the classroom at all times. We're enforcing social distancing at all times. So our very intelligent parent community has asked me repeatedly, and I think others of us have gotten this question, does this mean that if a child in the class is diagnosed with coronavirus, that the district will not inform the rest of the class because that child is not really a close contact under those definitions? I happen to think, obviously, we should notify. I suspect that that is your answer as well, but can you clear this up once and for all for the parents?
No, thank you for that question. I've spoken to the Department of Health so many times. I know Dr. Allen has as well. And sometimes we will have to go against what they recommend as far as communications to the community. We have to. There is no doubt in my mind that we need to share with the community if and when someone has COVID-19, we share it. So that's probably the simplest way I can answer that. They deserve to know, and we need to just do that, and we will do that as soon as we can, 100%.
Okay. Not a question, but a comment. There are additional health and safety concerns that people have. I think one of the things that the parent community and the administration is getting used to is that in normal times, there are many decisions that the school district makes every day on operations, detailed level decisions that the parent community never asks any questions about. They don't want to know about, they don't care, as long as things run smoothly. And this is a different experience because suddenly the parents want to know every single detail of every single moment of every single day. And rightfully so, right? They are more than trusting the school to act in loco parentis for them during the school day. They are literally trusting the school to keep their child safe from what we know is a potentially deadly virus. So at future forums, because we've now said that there will be one, the outstanding health and safety questions, will those be addressed then? So I know mask breaks and lunch and things that are connected to the ongoing science that's coming forth on how this virus works. Will we be addressing that in a future forum?
We will, and we will in much more detail than what we have in the past. I will say, if it's okay that I share, we have a building walkthrough checklist that our custodians and administrators will be aware of. So there are certain things that we will be doing that we are ensuring that's either in the classroom or the way that we clean or things that we look for will be present. And we can certainly share that as well.
My last comment is I just want to highlight, because that was a great deal of information in that presentation. I want to highlight that at all three levels, the students doing the fully virtual option will still be a part of their original classroom community. And I think that happens to be a very elegant part of this plan, which overall is maybe all of our second choice options for how we would run education. But I think many of us felt that it was very important that parents who were opting for a fully virtual option for medical reasons or because of their own tolerance for the risk, or even, we may have children who need to be fully virtual for periods of time because they have an illness that looks like it might be COVID symptoms, and it's wiser for them to remain at home until they know for sure, or hopefully not, but we may have children who are diagnosed. And I really appreciate that this plan allows children to stay a part of their original classroom community and seamlessly move back and forth to the extent that's necessary, because I think this is a huge decision for a lot of parents, whether or not to send their children back to school in person or not. And this makes it feel like less of a irrevocable decision. And I really appreciate that at the elementary level that the classes are together at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. The only other thing I want to add is the community, I think, can't see the immense amount of work that went into this. When you're doing something that is this complicated, there's certainly lots of questions to ask and lots of comments that can be made. And I think you said this already, Dr. Hines, but as we go, will changes be made to these plans if we find that something isn't working as well as we thought that it would work?
It's our responsibility to make those changes and to make them as quickly as possible, but to always think about what that means when we make those changes. Sometimes when a decision is made, I'm not saying here, I'm just saying in life, we don't think about what that means and what the implications are. And so when we do this, it needs to be very thoughtful, it needs to be deliberate, and it needs to be collaborative when we do that. So we will always, I can't think of one day where we won't be assessing or reassessing something that we're doing moving forward.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I think those questions were really thoughtful, and I appreciate the answers, Dr. Hines. Does any other board member, now that we've all had our three, anybody up for a second round? Julie.
I just have some I'm the vocabulary and clarification member of the board.
We love that about you.
So this week, news was announced about the first day of school. And also I know that in the past, we've talked about a phase-in time frame for the elementary. Can you clarify all of our dates and whether or not phase-in will be happening?
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. So with our new hybrid model at the elementary school, there's no phase-in. First day of school for all students, September 8th.
All students who are on that either A or the first day.
Thank you. That is correct. Sorry, my apologies. That's right. In the hybrid model, those who were slated to come in on the A day. Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions from any board members?
I think Deborah had a question.
I have a comment, actually. A public mea culpa to Dr. Hines, because that and I can't speak for anybody else on the board, but I have been asking about live streaming for all students whose parents felt uncomfortable sending them back to school probably since about June. And what I didn't fully appreciate from you is that you were trying to find the best way to deliver instruction to those children under very trying circumstances. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate your efforts to await state guidance, hoping that the state would offer some way for uniformity among the districts so that no district would be doing something different than another district in terms of how they were going to deliver instruction to all the students who are going to be home all the time, that you were hoping that BOCES would come through for us, that you were reaching out to other districts to collaborate, and that when none of that panned out, you said, well, I can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I just want to publicly say that I finally understand that. I appreciate your trying to think outside of the box to make the best lemonade out of lemons that you can. And I understand that the pedagogical perspective is that live streaming will never be like in-person education, but that under the circumstances, it's the best we can do to deliver instruction to the students, because we don't have a double set of teachers, right? And we don't have the budget to hire another set of teachers, especially for middle school and Schreiber. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
tolerating my many emails over the past however many months begging you to do this. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Nora, did you have a question? You put it in the chat.
No, I was actually, well, Rachel's next anyway.
Actually, Rachel, do you mind if I just make a clarification comment before? Thank you.
Of course.
So for the full virtual learning platform, which I'm still getting used to saying that, some of us may have seen two different dates when it comes up for the cutoff date for parents to let us know as a school district. So I want to be very clear. It's August 28th. That is the last day, and it's on a Friday, and it's by 3 p.m. And I think you may have seen 27th and 28th. It's the 28th. It's that Friday. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, did you have a question?
So I think that we're all well aware that there are going to be a lot of elementary school families that are impacted by this change, and it's only a few short weeks before school starts. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are reeling from the fact that we're now going to have in-person learning for their children 2 days a week instead of 5. And they're going to have childcare issues. When can people expect to find out whether their children would be in the cohort going Monday, Tuesday, or going Thursday, Friday?
I think I can handle that one, Dr. Hans. Give you a break.
Thank you.
The elementary principals are working on that literally right now, and they're keeping a lot of the information from which they placed their classes, over the summer, thinking we would be all in. So in other words, those cohorts were very carefully created. Those classes were very carefully created, and now they're trying to as carefully separate them into pieces for the hybrid, basically in half. And so it's going to take a while, but I'm sure that they will be out before September 1st.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but isn't our timeline September 2nd or 3rd that the class assignments would be going out? Isn't that what we put up earlier this evening? So that would be your answer, Rachel. September 2nd or 3rd. By that time, classes should be assigned, right? I mean, maybe earlier, but that's the deadline because we need to hear from the students who are opting out first to know whether or not they're in, group A, group B, or the virtual group. So
not to mess with all of you in a public meeting, but
you can.
That seems late. I know it's only August 20th, but the difference between August 20th and September 2nd, when people have to set up childcare, even though probably some people at least are probably still remote, we have to assume that a lot of families do have parents who are going to work as well and will need to figure out what to do with their children. If we can speed that up at all, I think that
Do you think we should give parents less time to opt out? Because the issue really is, so here's the timing, right? If we're putting out the form online on August 21st, let me go through the timing process. If we're putting out the form on August 21st, if the elementary school principals are first having their meetings and discussing, explaining the questions that both, the Weber and Schreiber have already done to understand the process of what class will look like on Tuesday, the 25th, should we not give parents a couple of days to work through their process of, okay, I'm sending my kid in or I'm not sending my kid in? So that brings us to the 28th, which is that Friday at 3:00. I mean, and we know that there'll probably be people who won't even, maybe there'll be people doing it earlier. So then you're talking the 28th, and then we're running into basically the next week, that next Monday, Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. So I don't know how else we move up the timeline. I'm with you. I understand that parents need to hear faster. And I know that we've pivoted and we've said we've been pivoting, and this is kind of like the last minute type of thing. But how much, I don't know where we changed the timeline. So
I'm not as familiar with the details behind the scenes of Weber and Schreiber because I didn't sit on that committee. But at the elementary level, I'm not actually sure that the principals need necessarily to aggregate the information of who will be going remote initially in order to do this. But I kind of think at this point, rather than discussing it at a public meeting, we should probably hand it off to our administrators and say, please, let's try and be as considerate of our families as we can, because September 2nd is a week before school starts. And anybody who has tried to set up childcare for children knows it's not necessarily easy to do, and it's not necessarily a 1-week process.
Tag, you're it, administrators.
No, so listen, we certainly hear the importance of doing this as soon as possible. So we will continue to discuss and see what we can do.
Thank you. I mean, I just want to say, in terms of people opting out to the fully virtual learning platform, my sense, and my sense is it's really hard to tell because we have received and I have responded to multiple emails from parents who, no matter what our, in this case, elementary model looks like, but the same going for Weber and Schreiber. And I've gotten emails from parents at every level. Their main concern was, is there a remote option? Because no matter what happens, we're not comfortable sending our children back to school. And that's kind of like a general statement. I mean, there were people, take a long, hard look before you open schools. And I get it. People are frightened about sending their kids back. So I don't know. And I guess we'll see how many people right now feel, whatever the hybrid plan is, I still want my child for now to be remote, so we'll see. But I totally agree that everyone has the right to not only opt their child out, but totally to know what they're opting into before they opt out. But I will say that there's a significant number of families that just for their own reasons, which I understand, don't feel comfortable sending their kids back. And that is why we have the fully virtual learning platform. Are there any other, Dr. Hines, would you like to make a comment?
Just real quick, and it seems like we answered the board's questions, which I'm happy to hear, and I appreciate the questions for sure. The comment I want to make is it has to do with changing courses. Now, we have heard of a few school districts that are now starting fully remote, right? So, and I think that pattern we will hear about that more and more over the next several weeks. For whatever reasons why they're doing it, they are making changes. Now, I'm not intimating that's what's happening in our school district, but I do want to make it clear that every superintendent, every board of education, and all the people who work within that school community are looking at all of these variables and trying to make sure that they're doing the best thing they can for their students and staff. And so I understand the sentiments of some of the community members who are not happy with the direction we're going in. And believe me, it hits me very, very hard because I understand where they're coming from. And in as much as I understand our school community and their staff who shared their concerns, we have to keep that process open. And I appreciate the board's leadership and being flexible and wanting what's best for kids as we move forward. And I'm really glad that we have another forum coming up, because it's extremely important that we continue to engage in these types of arenas and share the most up-to-date information as soon as possible. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. If there aren't any other board questions, I think we are going to move towards concluding the meeting. Okay. Does anybody have any old business? Does anybody have any new business? Okay, well, normally on our agenda at this point would be the opportunity for the community to be heard. And as I said at the opening, we regret that the format doesn't allow for live comments. But I would say that last time I did, and I'll do it again, say it again, please email us and let us know what your questions and concerns are. If we, the board, can't answer, and usually people email, a lot of people email the board, other people email the board and Dr. Hines. It really depends on who's writing the email. But regardless, we will direct it to the person who's best able to answer your questions, and hopefully you'll be able to get answers. I think with that, it's time to say goodnight to everybody and thank you. I truly hope that this has been informative, and we'll see you soon. Good night.